Had a number of bourbons together.
$10 million, that's wonderful.
Not everybody in the world is your customer.
You're just throwing money away.
I wish my car had 12 cylinders. So welcome to the very first episode of the Changemakers podcast. I am your host, Matt Bravo, and today we have a very special guest, not just because his office is right down the hall from mine, but because he has an illustrious background in marketing with some of the largest and most notorious organizations in the world, Kevin Nicholas. Thank you for joining us today, Kevin.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here. Just walked down the hall, so happy to.
Exactly. I knew if you weren't going to come on that it wasn't going to be the commute that inhibited you. So I'm glad that you came by for this, and that you brought your coffee as usual. Usually I have to make Kevin's coffee. So cheers. So. Kevin, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, Kevin runs our Fractional CMO group here at Frenik Labs, which is designed to help medium-sized businesses grow from that $5 to $10 million range to the next threshold, those $100 million, $500 million companies. And a lot of the times we see companies come to us and they've grown really, really expansively within their networks. And then when their network runs out of people, they go, wow, how do I reach more people? So Kevin, I know we've got a lot to cover here, but please tell us a little bit about what you do here at Frenik, and then we'll jump into your background a little bit.
Yeah, and thank you, Matt. And you know, it really is an interesting opportunity for small, medium businesses, right? Where they've grown to a certain level and within usually their network, and then in order to really continue to grow, they need to grow to this, what we call the total addressable market. But it's very challenging to get to that total addressable market without more sophisticated marketing and sales strategies, right? And so that's what we do, right? We can put together some of these marketing and sales strategies that can then reach that larger total addressable market that will really help fuel their growth. So yeah, that's what we focus on here. And it really is taking a combination of best practices from some large brands and companies that a lot of maybe small, medium businesses don't have access to, that we can repurpose and customize for their growth plans.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And I know we've worked on a number of projects together, but to give people a little bit of background, I want to circle all the way back to the beginning. You are originally from New Jersey, correct?
Yeah, New Jersey, but grew up in downstate New York, but I consider myself a native Atlantean. I've been here well over 25 years.
Do you have a Braves hat?
I do. Okay. In fact, I'm going to do one better. I root for the Falcons.
Wow, that's really impressive. I think they were in the process of redesigning their logo at one point. I was like, well, they should just use a big capital L.
Come on, Matt. We got a good season coming up with a new head coach.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, and just in case anyone from the Falcons organization sees this, I am available. I can step in at the quarterback or kicker position, ideally kicker, because I'm not really built to be tackled, but nonetheless.
And I can't step in any of those roles, so we'll continue to be the fan.
So when did you end up coming back down here to Atlanta from New York?
So around the Olympics, actually I moved down to Tampa for an opportunity, and then I came up to Atlanta in '95, and that was a great time when the Olympics was happening, and this was such a great buzz in Atlanta, and in particularly the technology scene, right? Yeah. So when I came up to Atlanta, I started working for Sprint and have a lot of background in telecom. Before I moved into other technologies like software. But it was really cool back in those days, because if you remember Bell South, right?
Right, I remember from back when I was a small child.
Yeah, I'm dating myself.
Well, you said 95, I was like, that's a hell of a year. I was born in 95, so we have a lot in common.
Okay, we're gonna end the conversation right now.
We'll cut that.
All good. So I started in telecom with some great companies. Bell South was a great company back then, right? And then AT&T and Sprint. Before I moved into the software side of technology, I've been in technology my whole career. But the reason why I bring that up is I think it's really important for people in their early careers to really get some solid, good experience, and you can really get some of that with with some real solid and stable companies like a Bell South. And that's what I did. And I started with Bell, again, Sprint, Bell South, AT&T, a combination of those years. I really focused on the product side. because the product, when you understand the product, especially technology, you really can understand how it could be marketed and sold.
Right.
And then I got more into the marketing side and also the sales side. So that was some of the early years. But I'll also add, I'm really passionate about our community. And early on, I was able to kind of align those two things, technology career and the community. And I was part of this this group that I co-founded called the Atlanta Technology Professionals, which really is a nonprofit organization that focuses on the technology professional in Atlanta, including the latest technology topics and giving back to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to numerous of their events, and it's a really an excellent group. And I'm sure for me, seeing it just in the last year or so, it's a totally different. Probably a lot more fulfilling for you to see how it's grown from just you and a few other people back in the day that founded the group to now permeating hundreds and hundreds of people that are part of that group in Atlanta.
Well, the key was to start it, but then get the hell out of the way. So this way good people can then take it to the next level.
Right.
That's what happened here. It's really grown great, and it's been very impactful in the community.
Yeah, and definitely a lot of good people in that group now. So from there, I want to kind of circle back into some of your experience as you got out of the telecom space and really got into the marketing and marketing leadership space, and more specifically demand generation, because you've had a lot of very colorful experiences and a lot of things that really speak to your track record that I want to cover and say, what were the driving factors behind these results, right? So I want to start back in, you were the head of global demand generation for SAP, correct?
I was. And that was a great pivot for my career, and not to talk about my whole career, but if it's more about how do you take your learnings and apply them, and how do you apply them specifically. In my case, I always was very interested in growth. How do you grow something, and specifically, how do you grow revenues?
Right.
And I got a good foundation, I believe, again, with Bell South, AT&T, really understanding some of the technologies, but then also how these things fit together from a product, marketing, and sales. I think that's like a triad, right? Where you have those three pieces that can really come together. And specifically in the software world, with SAP, this was during when the cloud was just starting, right, or was just beginning to get adopted, and there was this angst about how you go from on-premise software to cloud-based software, and the whole disruption behind it, right, the business model behind it, and how do you navigate that. And so demand generation is a really cool area in marketing because it drives revenue. Right, and it also aligns with the sales teams, and so it creates this uniform team, right? It's all about teaming and all about execution. And back to the demand gen, that's all about messaging. It's all about targeting and messaging and distributing that message. And if you do that correctly, then you can get interest. And the interest then leads to interested customers, leads, and revenue conversion. So I'll pause there, but that's why I got real interested in demand gen, and we were pretty successful in executing at SAP.
Yeah, so there's two pieces of this that I want to dive into a little bit deeper. One being, because there's two audiences I want us to kind of speak to here a little bit. One being the young professional, because this was kind of a crucial pivot point for you as a young professional in your career. And then number two is, for an organization that large, where you're dealing with billions of dollars in pipeline and you've got a global team, how do you even start to compose a strategy that's going to take them from point A to point B?
Well, my first strategy was visiting this global team in their various countries and drinking some of the sangria in Spain and maybe some of the sake in Japan. But yeah, it was all team building.
If that's the case, Kevin, then I should have more demand than anyone else.
But it truly is about teaming, right? It truly is about understanding who's on the team and providing the direction for them and the vision, the resources for success, and really also sponsoring them for advancement, right? And so when you get this, that's part of my management philosophy. And if you get this team that's clicking, then you can really start exponentially really making strides in performance. And specifically on demand gen, it was about how we at the time were able to focus in on the pain points of what our customers were experiencing,
right?
And how we message that and how we're going to solve them. And specifically at SAP, right? It was more than just an ERP, because SAP historically is an ERP software platform. But what I really focused on was more of that cloud division. The cloud division included Ariba specifically, which is supply chain, also Concur and Success Factors, where it was what are the applications that can then elevate your success.
Right.
That is an add-on, and then when you throw the cloud into it, even though it's a shifting in the business model, it works. It works for people, and that's why the cloud has been so successful. Is because you can scale a lot better in the cloud, and that's some of the value proposition that we put around it in order to deliver the message for lead gen that then fueled the revenue growth.
Gotcha. Very cool. And then from a career perspective, what was it? Did you have any difficulty kind of going from the telecom space into SAP at that time? I know that, obviously 2024 now, the economy is a little bit here and there. The job market, AI is replacing a lot of jobs. What were the selling points there for you? Is it just like, hey, I can sell snow in the wintertime, or kind of what were the driving factors behind that transition?
Well, at the time, right? I mean, software was becoming front and center. Telecom was getting a little more dated, right? And it wasn't moving as fast, in my view, as the software side. So it was kind of cool to get into some of the new technologies. But also because of all the innovation that was happening, cloud and all the things I had mentioned. The challenging thing for me, though, was getting out of the product side as much, because my background was more product, and then getting into the marketing, where I was really focused on generating pipeline. And I was becoming more of a specialist. And my background early on was more generalist, where I would own a product portfolio and the marketing and the sales around it. Now it was more, hey, laser focused on let's generate pipeline. And so that was a little more challenging for me, but then we made that transition to really be laser focused on that pipeline generation, and it was successful. After SAP, though, I was able to, and I'll jump the gun a little bit, when I went to Sage, and I had a global role at Sage.
You read my notes, Kevin?
Well, I could kind of see them on that side. So, but the reason why I bring that up is because at Sage, I had the opportunity to really bring the product piece back into it, where I ran product management for an enterprise group, but also the marketing side. So I think that learning from this is you can't market without having a tie back to the product set and the so what behind it from a customer perspective. So when you can unify a product roadmap with the marketing direction and vision and roadmap, and then you're clicking on all 12 cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish my car had 12 cylinders. So, well, one day. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Maybe an interesting point for us to dive into a little bit more is, that alignment between product and marketing. And I think especially with the clients that we work with a lot now, we see that a lot, is that they've got this product that they built because it's really cool and they see value in it. And then they decide they want to do marketing for it. And maybe they're doing the marketing in-house. Marketing's not their specialty. And they're totally discombobulated with each other.
Agreed. And the biggest error that we do as business owners, as product owners, is that we talk about the speeds and the feeds in technology. We don't talk about the customer. And the customer needs and wants and pain points are the things that we need to focus on. And marketing does that if you're doing it right. If you're not doing it right, you're going to have the wrong message, maybe to the wrong audience, and then you're throwing money away. So that's really why it's important to have the product and the technology aligned to the marketing message, but specifically aligned to the customer. And that's where the sales piece come in, right? We have a lot of great talented salespeople that we work with, and they need support. And that support is that sales enablement piece. It's about the consistent and scalable message, and not only the pipeline that you deliver for them through proper marketing channels and strategies, but also the assets that they need in order to be successful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that piece. From the time that the first time a customer finds out what your company is, especially in a smaller business, first time they see an ad or whatever, from the time that they talk to an account executive or a salesperson at that company, there's so many different opportunities for that customer to fall off, or that prospect, I should say, to fall off and not become a customer.
Yep.
And I think part of what's made you so successful and has grown so many of these different businesses you've worked with is that, every piece of that puzzle is analyzed at a very granular level to make sure that the customer is at the forefront of the experience, so that they're not like, well, I saw the advertisement, now the salesperson's saying something totally different. Now I got a product demo, and now I'm seeing something totally different again. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's right, Matt. In fact, on average, it takes at least 10 touches to a customer or potential customer for them to actually take an action. I got to tell you, if someone touched me 10 times or so, I'd probably take notice a lot sooner. However, right, these are the dynamics of the market and what we need to be very cognizant of, because it's about the customer, and we don't want to waste their time, and they have to understand what's in it for me, right? And that's part of that focus.
Very cool. Agreed there. So going into our I want to shift gears a little bit, because each thing on your resume has kind of a different piece of that puzzle that you had to put in place to grow that business. So it's really interesting. All I really had to do here was copy and paste your LinkedIn to really get a good storyline for this. So after Sage, you went to a company called Ingenious Med.
Yeah.
First of all, because a lot of people are not familiar with them unless they're in that specific industry. Could you give us a little bit of background on what that organization does?
Yeah, and Ingenious Med was a healthcare IT organization, and great organization, and really innovative. And what I try to do in my career, and where I try to bring this to our clients now, is having a breadth of understanding across industries and verticals, right? So healthcare, fintech, manufacturing, retail, so on and so forth. Because bringing all that experience together with best of breed marketing and sales strategies is really important, as I mentioned, for those mid-sized customers. Back to Ingenious Med, it was a cool model, because this is a great example of how the marketing and the product need to be united in execution and strategy, but also how the sales piece comes in, that whole triad again of marketing, sales, and product. So very briefly, with Ingenious Med, it was if you know about the healthcare IT space, there's a lot of different things going on with it. But one of the biggest thing is data. How do you collect data and for a more meaningful experience, including for patients, including for the hospital business models, and so on and so forth. And so we were a revenue cycle management company to start. And then we began to realize that we're collecting a lot of data at the bedside, because the software is what physicians would use in order to treat patients and capture the codes that how they're treating them. But capturing all that data opened my eyes. And this is like the next part of, I think, my enlightenment, and with businesses and to some extent in technology, is software now moving to data, right? The data model. And the data model is really critical, because if you're a company that captures data in whatever form of data that is, in this case it was healthcare data, such as length of stay data for specific diagnoses in a hospital. You can begin to aggregate that data, not necessarily at an individual level, but aggregate that data for business modeling for things like benchmarking and other things. In fact, and I'll leave it at this because there's a lot of detail here, we became one of the largest MIPS provider, which is a data performance and quality measures, to the federal government for Medicaid and Medicare, because of all the data we're aggregating. And so what does that mean? It means that it helps to drive towards a total quality of care model for better patient treatment, for better patient outcomes. And so data is a key trend right now that we're seeing, and it's been happening, and it's continuing to evolve.
Yeah, so you had this whole new data-driven business grow out of the services business just because you had collected such a large amount of data.
It actually grew out of a software business and a services business, right? Exactly. And now we evolved it to be more of a data model, right? And elevated the value of the company, and also the value we gave to our customers and that they gave to their customers, i.e. patients.
Right. So, and one of the things I want to talk about with Ingenious Med is, while you were there, you grew that pipeline and expanded that revenue by, revenue by 50%, pipeline by 400%. And so what, one of the things you mentioned to me is that there was a big kind of storytelling content strategy behind that. So I guess the question is, number one, was part of that in going to these different potential customers like the government and kind of building that data business, or was that on the services side of the business? And if so, what was that content strategy? How did that kind of come into place?
And content's king, right? As marketers and as growth agents, content has to be used, but it's not just content for the sake of content. It has to be content that resonates with the target audience.
People have to be content with your content.
Right. And so to answer your question, Bashir, what we were able to do, and I think is a lesson for me going forward as well, it's how do you target at a persona level? And a persona-based targeting is really important because it really gets down to the detail of the pain points and the value proposition that specific buying persona cares about. And so like at Ingenious Med, we went from maybe a persona of a VP or director of revenue cycle management all the way up to the CFO, because the CFO was very interested in aggregating data, and it created a whole higher value proposition. And so really having that alignment to not only what you provide to the customer, but how you message that customer in terms of the whole customer journey messaging. There's really there's two main focuses that marketers should have, and that the sales team always have, but sometimes as marketers, we don't align completely to the sales teams, which we should always do because we should be partners. And that is account executives and account management. That's hunting and farming, right? That's acquisition, customer acquisition, and customer upsells. Right. And so when you can have that whole unified message, you then, with that content, supported by the content, you have a whole customer journey mapped out.
Right.
And you reduce customer churn, and you increase customer value.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot now, especially with the SMBs that are just starting to grow outside of their networks, is that they're selling and upselling to all their customers the exact same way, whether they're talking to the CEO of a construction company or the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. And obviously the needs of those two people are going to be very different.
Agreed. And that's where the persona-based targeting and messaging has to come into play. It's about the message, and it's about the target. It's how you deliver that message. That's the other piece. It's like, where do these personas and people who are going to buy your product, where do they live? And you can have the targeting and the messaging, but if you're not delivering it to them, you're just throwing money away again.
Exactly. And it happens more often than you think in organizations that are larger than you think. So. Oh,
I've seen it, right? And I think we all have. And that's where bringing a very well thought out, targeted, and message architecture plan that's driven by the content is very, very important for growth in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a little bit of a pivot into kind of one of your, especially for the purposes of clients that we work with, really one of your hallmark experiences, your work as you were the chief marketing officer of a company called Innova, and you were with them through rebranding, a doubling of revenue, and an acquisition. So we got a lot to cover on this one. So I'll leave it to, where do you want to start on this one? Because I don't know necessarily the chronology of how all that took place.
Yeah, I'll be happy to jump in on that one. And some of the challenges, right, we had, it was actually ACS, and it's a large IT services company. It was more of a staffing company, but we made the evolution to more IT services, or I'm sorry, solutions with services. And the challenge there, just like a lot of larger companies have, and for that matter, even smaller companies, right, where they have various pieces of their business that they have to try to bring together in a unified message. Well, that was the same thing on a larger scale, where we had a lot of acquisitions underneath a very fragmented structure, right? Now, I'm not here to talk a lot about the organizational structure, but it made sense to unify the value propositions across the various business units that fed to a common value prop for the company. And it's not about losing the identity at the product level or at that individual divisional level. It's about having harmony between the parent and having at the business lines, where if you are going to UPS, right, and you're pitching one product, and then another team comes in and pitches another product, and a customer like UPS goes, "Wait a minute, are you guys the same company?"
Right.
Right? It causes customer confusion.
Right.
And so really aligning the organization under a common marketing theme and unique value proposition, that doesn't dilute at the business lines, but it does reinforce the structure for the future of your growth. And so that was one challenge. The other challenge was the demand generation, because, and this is fed from that first challenge, because you had all kind of different product lines with different messaging and different activities, you had very fragmented business development and demand generation. And it was hard. First of all, you couldn't keep track of it, and it was very hard to control costs. So bringing it all together also became very good in demand generation.
Interesting. And then where in that was the acquisition with Innova? Was that right when you got there?
So Innova was one of those business lines. However, what we did is we rebranded to Innova Solutions, right? And so even though Innova was one of the business lines, we completely made a new brand book and a new identity at the corporate level, and which really showcased the innovative and global nature of ACS, now Innova Solutions. And now it's quite a large organization that continues to grow because of the consistency in the messaging at the market level, but also at the customer level. Right.
So you talk about like not having a customer who's confused because you've got all these different business lines and all these different types of messaging. I think that even feeds down into some of the more granular things that we sometimes look at is, you know, are we driving the right emotions from the buyer, whether it be during the buying cycle or once they're with us? Do we have, you know, are we using the right, you know, it comes down to even some of the brand words that we use. There's so many, you know, pieces of little minutia that go into building a brand that people don't think about. They're like, oh, it's a logo and a couple of colors. Oh, you know, rebrand our company should be $300, right? But no, you're talking about, you know, we got to look at the global data, the addressable market, and then there's data available that we were able to use and say, what are the particular motivations and emotions that drive those particular personas?
Absolutely, Matt. In fact, you know, when you talk about what marketing is, right, there's so much sometimes cloudiness, for lack of a better word, from a technology standpoint around what marketing is. And, you know, what we do here is we really focused on the strategy and implementation, but it has to do with what is the brand, what's the market elevation of that brand. So this way, people know about the brand before your sales guy or sales lady come in and speak to you, right? And so that the salespeople don't have to spend half their meeting trying to explain what you do, right? They already know pretty much what you do if you have good branding and good market elevation. Demand generation that we spoke about, and then the sales enablement piece, and that's really critical to have all of these things aligned. And that's what we did at Innova, and you know, it's taken off, I think, as a result of that.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. And obviously not with Innova anymore. You're doing fractional CMO and fractional CRO work, and we've got a lot of clients now in that mid-market that we talked about earlier that are kind of growing out of their cocoons into the butterflies that are now growing with your help and with the help of the implementation creative teams behind you. So, you know, a lot of these that we talked about, these are large organizations that you're dealing with $100 million, $200 million portfolios, or you've got a lot of pipeline. So, you know, I know we talked about a lot of the alignment and messaging, but, you know, from your perspective, when a client comes to us and they're like, we got to $10 million in revenue and we never made a call, we don't even have a website. So where do you start with somebody like that when they say, we want to go from $10 million to $80 million in revenue?
Well, I first start by saying congratulations. I mean, you've been very successful to $10 million. That's wonderful. Now, what's your ambition? Right? What do you want to be when you, quote unquote, grew up?
Right.
Right? And that's with all respect. you can get to a $10 million revenue. Some businesses are able to do that, but then less businesses are able to get to 25 million. Then less businesses are able to get to 50,
right?
And so on and so forth. And you get there based upon your grit, based upon your effort, and that can only take you so far, right? And then you have to put some sophistication in your growth plan if you want to go to that next level. Now, where do you get that sophistication, right? Some of these larger brands have invested a lot of money, a lot of resources into developing some sophisticated models. And so wouldn't it be cool if you can, as a smaller business, take some of that sophistication and just best practices, it's called best practices, and implement it at that scale? That's where you can then grow from your market size that's big to that full total addressable market that you can identify with some of these practices that we implement with our customers, where we're taking best practices and we're putting it in a customized plan and strategy for that business to grow. And I got to tell you what, I get really jazzed with helping these small medium businesses grow to that next level, just because you can see it in the people's eyes when they start seeing this acceleration, and you become part of the team, right? That's what partnering is all about.
A little different than working with the corporate fat cats, right?
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of the same motions. It's just you have to put it in a package that works. Right,
exactly. You don't have a $10 billion a year marketing budget, but how do we take that down to a smaller scale? Maybe it's on a budget basis. Maybe it's regional. Maybe it's the breadth of services, whatever the case is.
And also, Matt, as we know in the economy, small and medium businesses are the driver of the economy.
Exactly.
Right? The large companies are very good to have and notable, but the economy drives off of small and medium business growth. Exactly. And if we can play a little part in that, then we're doing our job as good people and good U.S. Americans.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that. Maybe we can get American Express Small Business Saturday to sponsor our next episode. So we'll see. So I want to kind of round this out with a few key messages that we want to get across from the people who may be in one of those businesses that we're talking about, but also maybe how some of these things apply to people who have the same career aspirations to get to where you're at, and kind of maybe some of the intertwinings between the two. So number one, I want to start with from a strategy perspective, right? And from somebody who may not even have a large enough business, someone who's just started out and maybe they started a marketing agency or a construction company, and they just had their first $500,000 a year. What would be the first things that you would focus on if you were them to get to that, from that 500,000 to the point where now you're going to somebody like you and saying, let's build out a strategy and take this thing to a $100 million company that's bigger than a lot of the companies in the world?
Absolutely. And the first thing I like to understand is, how'd you get there?
Yeah.
How did you get to $500,000? Because that's a notable accomplishment in its own right. And how do you get to over 10 million or whatever? And understanding the DNA of the business, but also the people. Because businesses are made up of the people. And if you lose sight of the person, either at the organizational level or certainly at the customer level, like persona-based marketing, if you lose sight of that there's an actual person who's going to buy your stuff, right, then you lose. And so I always like to focus on, okay, who is the person? And why were they successful? And now what's holding them back? Why are they not able to grow to that next level? And sometimes it's customized. But what I usually find, though, is that they have grown to a level, once again, of within their network, and they can't get beyond that. And that's where the targeted messaging, the content, and the reach and some of the more sophisticated approaches come in, where you can now start reaching out beyond what you can see and what you can reach. And so then that whole conversation is a lot of due diligence that will help drive a customized strategy for marketing and sales.
Absolutely. I think that's a key takeaway, is keeping people at the forefront, both from the customer side, keeping your customers in mind as people, and also as yourself as the entrepreneur or the marketer, whatever the case is, to not be selling things or be promoting yourself as somebody that you're not.
That's right.
So we've come to the conclusion of our main segment here. So now we're getting to the fun part. This is what I like to call the lightning round, a little invention of my own. So these are a few.
Do I need to take cover here, Matt? The lightning round, that scares me.
So the lightning round, I just hope you don't have any metal objects on your person, because then we're going to be in trouble.
Just a metal plate in my head.
You're not near a large. So we've got a couple of lightning round questions, then we got a special surprise for you. So a couple of quick lightning round questions. Number one. One word to describe your leadership style that goes across all these different companies.
Yeah, inclusive. I go back to the people, right? And I'm going to restate this because I think it's important, because a mentor of mine instilled this in me, actually more than one, where as a leader, you need to provide your vision, but you also need to provide the resources for your people to be successful. And they need to understand where you're going. And then thirdly, providing opportunity for development and promotions. And Absolutely. Where you can then be inclusive in that, then you can really build a high performance team. And we can do that with small and medium businesses too. You don't just have to have my 100-person SAP global team to do that, right?
Yeah.
Actually, it gets a little more complicated the bigger it is. But yes, I mean, it's about inclusivity, I think.
I like that. That was a good answer. I didn't even write that question expecting an answer that good, so I'm glad you said that. Number two, what would you say is the most underrated marketing tool or strategy that a high percentage, I won't say a particular number, that a high percentage of companies do not utilize, that is low cost, that could be applicable to really any business?
Yeah, and I know these are not rehearsed, so but I've got something that I feel strongly about, and that's targeting. And targeting is really important because everything we spoke about, it's got to be the right target with the right message, with right distribution. And one piece of technology, one methodology that I think is going to continue to just accelerate in use and success is account-based marketing, right? Account-based marketing is no longer new. However, it's still a little misunderstood. And I like to classify account-based marketing into two main camps. There's the grassroots camp, which is, hey, we have a targeted list of customers and we're just going to understand at an individual customer level what their pain points are and how we're going to solve those pain points, and we're going to develop targeted collaterals to them, right? And that could be very successful.
Yeah.
It can be also very intensive, but you could still get a lot of return on that. And also you can still get a better customer interaction and relationship going. And then there's a system approach, and sometimes you can use them both together. The systems approach, of course, the account-based marketing platforms, where you can start understanding online behavior of your targets, and then start really understanding what they're truly interested in based upon what you see them do, and then you can start targeting them. So again, I think account-based marketing is it's a little scary at first, but if used in the right strategy, it could be very successful.
Yeah, at a high level, I think that ties back into something that goes through all these different experiences you've had, which is not to say, hey, buy what I'm selling, but what does this customer need? And then we can kind of get into that box. And if you're not in that box, then maybe it's not everybody in the world is your customer.
That's right. That's right. And it's a really good point, because you need to target the person and the persona that you really are selling to based upon what you can deliver for them. Absolutely.
So last lightning round question. If you could mentor young Kevin, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give him?
Well, certainly what I've done, there was no real method to the madness, probably. It just kind of happened.
I think that's how we all go through life.
I would say seek out mentors early. Get advice on things like not only career, but who are you as a person?
Yeah.
What matters to you? What really gets you going? What are you passionate about? I was mentioning this the other day, actually, in a group. My opinion is it's not necessarily as much as what you know versus the effort that you put forth.
Right.
And if you can really have a team that has the effort, you can't undo apathy. easy, I don't think. But you certainly can teach a very passionate person how to be successful. And I think just that spirit of knowing that you don't know all the answers, seeking those answers out with mentors who can really help you, and then putting that effort into it. And it's not necessarily how much you know, but how much you try.
This guy's like Confucius. So we're done with the lightning round. We've got one more fast segment. This is the tsunami round. So Kevin, we've had a number of bourbons together over the years now. So I know I don't look old enough to drink, but don't worry, everybody. So our executive producer Neil is going to bring over some shots of bourbon, and we're going to see if you're able to identify these. We're going to see if your bourbon acumen is. These are labeled A, B, and C, and all I'm going to ask you to do is when you taste one, put it next to the bottle that you think it came from.
Now this is a challenge, Matt, but I'm up for the challenge. And I will say that I'm first going to I'm going to make it a little interesting, and I'm just going to like, one of those games where at the Brave Stadium.
Yeah, but.
Right, okay. Got to cleanse the palate.
Right, yeah, you need to grab you some water.
Oh, okay.
This is intense.
Ooh, yes.
This is gonna make for a great TikTok, Kevin, I'll tell you that much. Okay.
I'm gonna taste these two again. Mind if I take another sip?
Oh, please, as much as in there you can have.
Very nice.
This is a tough one. I think it's tougher than a lot of people would think, especially for an aficionado like yourself.
This is tougher, but I'm going with this.
Wow. I think Jack Daniels is going to be pleased to know that you chose the Woodford as Jack Daniels.
Really?
Yes, and the Four Roses. This one, the one you thought was Four Roses no, you got the Four Roses correct. You just got the Woodford and the Jack Daniels. So we're batting .333. That's not bad.
Not bad in the MLB. However, here's my rationale for why I got these mixed up, because I think Woodford is a little more strong than the Jack Daniels and had a little extra bite on it, and so that I could have easily switched them around.
Yeah.
So let's just do this for the sake of completeness.
Okay.
There you go, Matt.
Those have a little bit of bite. The Four Roses, small batch, very smooth. I'm sure their proprietors will be happy to hear that.
Very smooth.
Thank you again.
We can put a little extra in that cup.
Yep, we're gonna pour our to-go glasses and call this one a wrap. Thank you for coming on, Kevin. Appreciate it, even though it was right down the hall. And we will look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of Changemakers here with Frenik Labs.